on drugs, from my perspective, where I live, was really a war on communities of color. It was a war on poor folks. It still is a war on communities of color. It still is a war on poor folks. If you look at it, the United States of America, with all of its platitudes around freedom and democracy, it has the highest incarceration rate in the world. But if you end up taking out of that population blacks and Latinos, all of a sudden it would be the lowest incarceration rate in the world. So it just tells you who is going to jail, who's doing the time, and that they're all being picked up and doing hard time, devastating community. But that's not only part of it. The other part of it is when you look around, more of the prisons have become privatized. And that means that those private jails are basically operating on government welfare. That the folks are being shipped into the jailhouse, and the jail is being paid by the inmate, and in many places the inmate is being reduced to a slave labor where they are basically engaged in commerce that is feeding private corporations, not only here but all over the world. So one of the things is that we really begin to realize is the hypocrisy in the war on drugs. But we also got to ask the question, why do we always got to talk about war? Why can't we talk about other kinds of solutions? That's the kind of militarism that we continue to grow up in, and we don't think twice about what that means to engage in war. War always destroys somebody. War always devastates a community. War always takes someone out of a family. War doesn't look at the complicated realities that exist within a society, because one half of all of those who are incarcerated are there because of substance abuse, and therefore should be treated as a medical condition and not as something that is criminalized. Sisters and brothers, enough is enough. We got to stand up. We got to begin to preach this and teach this, because many of us stood up realizing the hypocrisy. For example, that you could come in with powdered cocaine and basically end up with a shorter sentence or doing probation. And on the retail end, crack cocaine end up going to jail for a longer sentence. That's the kind of hypocrisy that we are engaged in. We need to wake up our whole society, because the people are politically disempowered. And so it all engages in this kind of context, and we got to stand up and begin at this point to seriously take on this issue and raise the question of what it means to build a society. What is enough? We got to stand up. We got to begin to preach this and teach this, because many of us stood up realizing the hypocrisy. For example, that you could come in with powdered cocaine and basically end up with a shorter sentence or doing probation. And on the retail end, crack cocaine end up going to jail for a longer sentence. That's the kind of hypocrisy that we're engaged in. We need to wake up our whole society, because one of the things that is going on that I truly and thoroughly believe is that as we deal with the down spiraling of the economy, the jails fill up because you can't employ in the kinds of jobs that folks were employed in the 50s and 60s. So you end up creating pauper prisons. You end up pumping drugs in a community. You end up pumping drugs so that people are politically disempowered. And so it all engages in this kind of context, and we got to stand up and begin at this point to seriously take on this issue and raise the question of what it means to build a society. God bless you. Continue on. Continue to be present.
Wow. Truly some powerful words about the racist impact of the war on drugs, and a powerful start to our evening.